all, and into All India Runners Motivation. Today we are privileged to have runner and coach Norrie Williamson all the way from South Africa, and it's a big privilege for us to have him for our interview. When it comes to his achievements, he has achieved it all. He is ran more than 150 ultra marathons. He has been a winner of lot many events during his training days and competing days, I would say. He is the winner of a 12-hour longest day track race between Pietermaritzburg in August 1997. He is the winner of a 1,000-kilometer race with the Star Mazda, Johannesburg to Durban, 1983, and he has won lot of awards. Primarily, he has also been involved in unifying the different provincial and school after South Africa came into the fore in athletics in the 1990s. Apart from running, he is majorly into sports administration. He is a certified coach. He's also has measured the tracks of many events worldwide. He's also been involved in worldwide events and also in India. So without further ado, I would like to invite Coach Norrie Williamson to our live program.
Hi,
Hello.
Rajesh. How are you? Good
Fine.
afternoon
How are
in
you?
South Africa. I'm well,
Good
thank you.
afternoon. Yes, that's nice. That's a lovely background you have. What is that background?
This is Durban. This is my
Okay.
goldfish bowl on Durban. And in the
Okay.
back here, if you see there,
Yeah.
the stadium here, and that stadium is actually the Moses Mabhida Stadium.
Okay.
That's the finish of the Comrades Marathon on the down run. So
Okay.
a number of Indian runners will recognize that from 2018, which was the
Okay.
first year that the race finished down there.
Wonderful. That's nice. And I'm sure, I mean, the participants from India has been increasing every year for the Comrades. It's one of the most sought out marathons worldwide. But in India, especially because we've got a lot of people running it, we got Satish Gujaran, sir, whom you know. He has ran 10 times, and we got 𝐈𝐧𝐝, who's a brand ambassador for Comrades, also running it many times. So it's a well sought out one of the things which everyone wants to do actually. So it's nice, and in fact, a few weeks back we had Bruce Fordyce coming in and saying hello to India. So
Excellent.
so that's nice. So tell us a bit about yourself, your childhood days, Norrie, because in my research I never found anything much. I mean, not much about your childhood pursuits in athletics.
Yeah, no, sure. I was born in Scotland, hence the strange accent. Born in Scotland in Edinburgh, or rather in Glasgow, and moved to Edinburgh. And I was
Okay.
educated in Edinburgh and then moved to Dundee, where I studied as a civil and structural engineer.
Yeah.
And my early sporting life wasn't actually that sporting because I was, shall I put it this way, I was the heaviest person in my class, not
Oh,
the
okay.
fastest by any means. And
Okay.
I was put in the center of the rugby team at hooker because of
Okay.
my ability to flatten a scrum
Okay.
through pure weight.
Okay.
Yeah, so my sport in Scotland was very much rugby, and in fact, I was passionate. It's both an asset and a detraction to have too much passion. But
Okay.
most things that I go in passionately and give 100%. So yeah, rugby was my sport until I left Edinburgh and Scotland in 1981, February
Okay.
81. And then I
Okay.
came to South Africa. And I came here as an engineer, primarily, or I flew out as an engineer, primarily to come here and play rugby and follow a profession in engineering. But that
Okay,
didn't happen.
In one of your interviews, I heard that in the flight from Scotland to South Africa is when running suddenly kicked into you, or suddenly you had a nirvana or a realization that running is the sport for you. Is that true?
Absolutely. It's actually quite an interesting story. I left Heathrow and I bought a magazine called Jogging. I mean, I was using running maybe a couple of times a week as training for rugby, but it was only 30 minutes, something like that. And as I say, in fact, in 1974, I was so unfit that I probably ran 2 kilometers to the top of a hill,
Okay.
a very small hill, and had to walk. So
Okay.
running wasn't a big thing in my life. But then I was smoking then sort of 30 a day. So I gave up smoking, played rugby,
Okay.
got to a good standard. And so at Heathrow, I bought this magazine called Jogging. And in it, by pure coincidence, was an article by a gentleman called Bob Holmes from the UK
Okay.
Telegraph, who talked about 2 races. One was 2 Oceans, and the other one was
Okay.
Comrades. Comrades, 2 Oceans is in Cape Town. It's 56 kilometers. And I didn't really know much about Cape Town. And then the other one was Comrades, and it was from Pietermaritzburg to Durban. And I thought, yeah, okay, I'm going to be living in Durban. And it was
Okay.
56 miles or 90
Okay.
kilometers. And I thought, that sounds like a good challenge. No one in Scotland will believe that I can run 56 miles, 90 Ks. Let me
Okay.
have a crack at that. And basically that was the motivation and the seed sown. Now, what's interesting perhaps to a number of runners would be that I arrived here on the 22nd of February, 1981.
Okay.
I ran my first marathon on
Yeah.
the 22nd of March,
Okay.
1981. That's 1 month later, 2
Yeah.
hours, 55 minutes. I
Okay.
ran my first 56 kilometer 1 month later. I came 11th, but in fact, I think Bruce was in that run, but most of the top guys were using it as a training run. I never knew that it was only a training run. And
Okay.
then on the 31st of May, so that's 3 months after arriving here,
Yeah.
I ran Comrades Marathon in 7 hours, 9 minutes to get a silver medal. Now,
Wow.
why I'm saying it's interesting is not because, of those times, but more what that means to the average runner. First of all, it's not about the distance, because in 3 months, there is no way I did 1,000 kilometers of training the
Okay.
way people tell you have to do for Comrades.
Yeah.
And secondly, that my time was based on leg strength and speed
Okay.
over the short distance, not over the long distance. And
Okay.
those are keys to training for everyone, irrespective of what distance they want to run. Even if you want to run a 10K, being fast over 1 mile is far more important than being able to go out and run 60, 80 kilometers a week. So
Okay.
speed determines your potential, and endurance gives you or long, slow running gives you the endurance to do the distance.
Wonderful. That's amazing story actually. That and it's amazing also that your first marathon you clocked a sub 3 hour, and also your first comrades, you clocked the sub 8 hour. And it is purely due to your training techniques of speed and endurance.
It's a basic, or these are the basic fundamentals, and I mean we could talk about that, but yeah, if you get your training correct, you don't need to be doing all the distance. And people get it so wrong that they have to run long all the time, and that's a big mistake. You don't pick a winner by how many miles they've run. You pick the winner by how fast they are over the short distance. It's no coincidence that Kipchoge came from the track. Haile Gebrselassie came from the track. Bekele came with a track background. All the best in the world come from running hard and well at short distances. They didn't go out there and spend all their time doing long distances.
Okay, wonderful. I mean, when you say that people have to do longer distances all the time, maybe it turns down to an small addiction, that they don't feel satisfied themselves, that, they have not done their like a 30 kilometer or like or a 50 kilometer or 100 kilometer week actually. If they don't do 200 or 150 miles in a week, 100 miles in a week, they feel very dissatisfied.
Yeah, I don't think that's good. There's only so much you can do, and the amount you can do in a week is actually determined by, again, your speed or your average training pace. So anyone that is the normal sort of club runner, has a family, has work, has a social life, can only handle about 10 to 12 hours of training in a week. So if you take Bruce, Bruce was a great example. I know Bruce very well since about 1984. And when he was at his peak, he was running a 2:17 marathon, which is 3:17 per kilometer. He was running 30 minute 11 seconds for 10 Ks on the track. That's 3 minutes a K. And he raced comrades at 3:45 a K. Now his average training pace, let's say it was 4 minutes a K in average, or let's say it was even a bit more than that. Let's say it was 3:45 a K, which was his racing pace for comrades. That's 16 Ks an hour. If you take 12 hours, that would be 192 kilometers in a week, would be his maximum. And that actually was his peak training. And he would do that for 3 weeks and then have a 3-week taper. Outside that, he would be doing less than that. So that is about the most. So the people going out nowadays and running as normal people, not professionals, as normal people, running, let's say 240 Ks in a week, they're actually overtraining. And if you want another example of that, look at what's happened since we've come back from the COVID layoff. In Norway, they've set 5K records. In Netherlands, recently, they had the Seven Hills race where they did 3 national records over 5Ks. You look at the Diamond League in Stockholm and look at the world record by Joshua Cheptegei. You look at the number of national records and personal bests. People have been forced to take time off, and now they're coming back and they're making national records, personal bests. That's a sign that people have previously been racing too much, or in their races, they're so busy competing, they're not doing their best times. And we're going to see that even amongst the club runners. When you go back to the racing in India, wait and see. People will be doing personal bests because they're training actually better because they're not racing as much. Too many runners run too fast in training.
That's nice. That's such a lovely explanation, Norrie. Before we move further with questions, your friend is here. Satish is saying hello, and
How's
he
it,
also
Sadish?
he can see Madiba's pic behind you, and looking forward to hearing you. We got one more person from Dubai saying hello to you. Is Alvino from Dubai
Oh,
Roadrunners. Okay,
yeah.
and Rakesh Singh is.
That's an interesting one, Rakesh, because I believe Dubai Creek Half Marathon
Yes.
is coming on, and in fact, this week they've had in Dubai the first one of the first cycle races back, and last week they had a race in the mall in Abu Dhabi with 200 people. So the world is starting to open up, and I'm very involved in various events, South Africa and around the world, where we're so desperately trying to get back and conquer this COVID scenario. So it's quite interesting. So great to hear someone from Dubai.
I mean, I raced the first Dubai Creek half marathon. I was there. I ran the first Dubai Creek half marathon. And also at that time we had the Samsung. Samsung was the sponsor for the full marathon for Dubai. So a couple of times I've done that. So it is nice, it's a nice, very good route actually.
The Dubai Creek.
Yeah.
The Dubai Creek. I love the underpass at the end there.
Yes.
I've run it a couple of times, and of
Yes.
course, the underpass goes under the creek.
Yeah, under the ocean.
Yeah, and so that race is on, and I think they're going for about 2,000 runners. That's sponsored by a company called Johnson Crane, or it was.
Yes,
and,
it was. Yes.
Yeah, and I work here in South Africa, in Johannesburg, with a race called Johnson Crane, and it was linked companies. And here we get 12,000 people for the race. This year we're looking at a new, or for next year, for 2021, January, we're looking for a single lap race because of COVID and so on. So, it's interesting. I've been to both of those, the South African one and the Dubai one. Excellent.
Very nice. That's nice. So tell us about your first race, Norrie. I mean, how was it? And as you look back as a coach now, and you as a participant, you were not coach at that time. What mistakes did you do at that time?
So my very first race was actually a thing called the Highland Games in Cooper and Fife in Scotland. And I was still a rugby player. As I say, I was a hooker. But by then I was probably a bit more muscular. It would be about 1979, somewhere around about there. And it was a 6-mile race around Cooper. But it was a Highland Games pay prize money. And of course, we were amateur at that time. So you won't find my results, but I would be very far back down the field. My first real race in South Africa was the marathon here, and it was actually for my club. It was my current club race, Savages Athletic Club. And actually during that race, I met a real legend. His name's Kenny Craig. And I was about the last 12 Ks of the marathon I ran with Kenny. And he said to me, "Oh, what are you training for?" I said, "I don't really know, but there's this thing called the Comrades. And, I'd like to give that a try." And he turned around to me and he said, "Listen, you're going to get a silver in Comrades." Now, this was 1 month after I arrived here. That was my very first real race. And so it sounded like someone that I should know about and so on, that knew a lot about Comrades. So I asked him, "How many have you done?" And he said to me then, 81, 22.
Oh, God. Okay.
22 races. And Kenny, of course, went on and did 40 comrades.
Yeah.
But that was 1981. In 1983, Kenny and I went and did that 1,000-kilometer together.
Okay.
And while I won that, Kenny came second. But the following year, we went across and to UK, and the idea was that I would break the record or attempt the record on the John O'Groats to Land's End. And because I was inexperienced, because I was stupid and I was obsessive and passionate, I had done too much that year and I got a stress fracture. Just as we went through my home city of Edinburgh. So it was 50 miles before Edinburgh, and I ran another 50 the next day to Perth, and I had to pull out. And Kenny went on, so I got the bike and started cycling with, scouting the route for Kenny. Kenny went on and got the record, 10 days from John O'Groats to Land's End. Some people may have been watching the South African English runner Carla, who broke the women's record last month. I think it was last month, in 12 days rather. But Kenny had that record, and that's actually an incredibly hard record to beat. It took a very, very good, probably one of the world's best ultra runners, Don Ritchie, 2 attempts to beat Ken's record. So so that's, I met him on the first thing. I've been very, very, very lucky to be able and privileged to have met some of the best coaches, best sports scientists, best runners in the world, and being able to share or understand some of the key training from them.
Okay. So too much of training was the lesson you have learned, in that race, right? When you got a stress fracture. Too much of running.
Too much, no, absolutely. Well, I've done in that year from the January. I did. I'm trying to think. 𝐑𝐮𝐧𝐶 Canoe Marathon, which is a 3-day canoe marathon from Pietermaritzburg to Durban. I did that with my second, and so on. And Andy Booth, a phenomenal guy who has helped me in all my major races. Then we did the swim, the Midmar swim. That doesn't take too much out of you. Then the Leppen Ironman, which was a canoe Ironman, 21-kilometer canoe, 120k cycle, and a 42k run. Then that was there. Then Oceans, which is 56 kilometers. Then the Durban Ironman, which was, in those days, it was a 3.8k swim, 140 cycle, and a 42k run, which I came second in. Then that got us the sponsorship for the London to Paris triathlon. And in between that, of course, I had comrades, 90k. And so London to Paris triathlon was a run from center of London as a team of 4 to Dover, swim the English Channel as a team, and then cycle from Calais to Paris. And we won that. And then, of course, I went back again for this John O'Groats to Land's End. And those were only the major races. So you can imagine, I mean, I'd just overdone it. And that was the lesson. And the thing was that the lesson was taught to me as I ran through my home city where I wanted to go back and show people that actually I was quite a good runner, And here I was totally crippled and having to pull out at my home city. It was that night in Edinburgh, I phoned Tim Noakes in Cape Town and I asked him for his advice, and he had me hopping around to see if we could see whether it was a stress fracture or not. And the following day I went to the Hibs physiotherapist, the Hibs Hibernian Football Club physiotherapist, and tried to strap it up, but there was no way. Yeah. Anyway, lesson learned.
Lesson learned. So over a period of time, did you end up reducing the number of races you were participating because of that lesson?
Yeah, so look, I mean, you can get away with a lot more when you're younger. And of course, as I say, coming from the rugby background, I had strong legs and so on. So, excuse me a second. So, yeah, I was able to do probably more. I mean, I was off from that John O'Groats for 6 weeks with the stress fracture. The following week, I flew to America to join a very good late friend now. He was killed on cycling a couple of years after this, Dave McCartney, in Hawaii for the Hawaii Ironman. And that's where triathlon actually sort of got birth. Between London to Paris and Hawaii Ironman, triathlon as a federation got born with Dave and myself at the Hawaii Ironman. And yeah, we did that. So the recovery, and that's the other thing, is obviously I wasn't able to run for 6 weeks, but I was swimming and I was cycling. And in the triathlon in Hawaii, the Ironman, I came 7th in my age group. And at that age, it would be the 30 to 34, which is the most competitive age group there. So, you know, that was the era of Mark Allen, Dave Scott, these guys. And I promise you, we were very much novices trying to find our way with how to train and so on. And that was 1984.
So the running and triathlon almost, you know, it was almost simultaneous for you, right? I mean, within a few years of a couple of years of running, you already did a natural transition to triathlon.
Yeah, and in fact, I became the first president of South African Triathlon. As I say, Dave McCartney, myself, Tim Noakes, Peter Gillespie, a few others, started the triathlon in this country as a federation. And yeah, what we found and what you will find is if someone is a dedicated, obsessive runner, as I said, obsessive. I was a good smoker. I became a better rugby player and I became a better runner. But you know, anything, you can become addictive, as you say. And what you will find is that sort of person, when they move to triathlon, probably ends up running better. And the reason is they're still doing something. So they're feeding the guilt complex that we all have. And because they're doing the swimming and the cycling, they're using slightly different muscles, certainly in the cycling and running. And so their muscles get the recovery and therefore they perform better in the run. And again, this comes back to why are people performing better after COVID lockdown? Because they're not overtraining. They're not doing too much too soon, and they're not overusing their muscles.
That's nice. So at that time, did you have any coach, or you know, I mean, who was your favorite athlete during that time?
Well, my favorite athlete when I first started was the Cuban 400 and 800 meter runner. And hang on, I'm sorry, the name's just gone. I didn't expect that question. Carl. Oh, yes, it will come back to me as we talk, I'm sure. But he used to wear.
He did a world record, right? For the.
Oh yeah, 400 and 800. And
he used Montreal Olympics.
Montreal 76. Yes. Yeah. Correct. Tall Cuban guy. Who is now on the Olympic Committee. So and he used to wear long socks.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I used to wear long socks.
Yeah, they
And
call it. Sorry, they have a technical name for that now. It's compression stockings.
correct. And in fact, in '83, I had a set of headphones with an aerial on it with a radio.
Yeah.
It's now called a Walkman. Or it was, and it's now an iPod and an iShuffle, or and now of course it's on your watch now. You've got music on your watch now. So so very much you know, I like to think that I was before my time. In fact, the very first marathon, as I say, my time was the same as the Olympic winning time in 1896, which put me 84 years behind the record.
Good.
But it's but I've never had a coach. I've had many coaches. I mean, I've met and spent a lot of time with many coaches. My engineering background gets me to analyze things. That's the toolkit you get as an engineer, is being taught how to analyze things. And so I've been incredibly lucky meeting people like Carl Johnston, Frank Horwood, Horwell, lots of good. Tim Noakes, obviously, in 1982 was the first time I met him. He's probably had one of the biggest influences on my life. But many people, and people like Bruce Fordyce, Mark Plyke's, the era of the 80s in South Africa. We had incredible runners. Matthews Temane, Willie Matolo, people like that who you could get bits and pieces from and start rethinking how you were doing things. And I've been incredibly lucky with the people that I have met and continue to meet around the world with the travels.
That's nice. I think the Cuban runner you mentioned is Alberto Juanterna.
That's the man. The man. And I also spent a few days, almost a week, with Carl Lewis in 1999 in Houston as a result of a product that he was endorsing. And I mean, that had huge impact because this was now a sprinter. So while my focus has been on distance and ultra distance, working with a sprinter and spending time with a sprinter. In fact, the organizer of one of the races, or a number of the races in Nigeria, Yusuf Ali, was a champion, African champion in long jump. And, we met when I went across to measure that. And literally in that first car ride to the hotel from the airport, we just clicked. And you learn so much from people like that. If you want to learn, people have an amazing amount of knowledge and stories to tell you.
So you never had any coach, Norrie, but you are a coach now. How did this transition from athlete to a coach take place?
Well, I mean, I'd done quite well in 83 with the 1,000 kilometer, and I'd won a number of 100-milers. Thanks to a guy called Dave Box, actually, who was the world record holder in October 1968, who I happened to meet in the gym when I first arrived, 1981, in South Africa. So I'd meet him regularly, and that started me in analyzing. And then I went and I did a qualification with the road running. It was called South African Road Runners Association at those times. And since then, I've got probably 10 shelves, 12 shelves of various coaching books.
Okay.
And I've done in 1995, when we were allowed back as South Africa into the international competition, I did the first IAAF course in Africa, in South Africa, and qualified there and just carried on. And you've got to go out and make these things happen. When I've gone to various world championships and so on, I've stayed on and done the coaching courses that are available, looked out and built up the toolbox of information.
That's nice. Wonderful. In fact, in those 4 or 5 racks of books, you also have your own book, which you have written. I think you've written a couple of books on marathon.
Yeah. Well, the first one I wrote was, and it's actually quite funny, it was called Every Man's Guide to Distance Running. Yeah. And it was published, in fact, by the chairman of the Centurion Club, Bill Jameson, pen print. But when it was taken over by Oxford Press, the ladies there said, I'm sorry, you can't have it called Every Man's Guide to Distance Running. It has to be everyone's guide to distance running.
Gender equality. So I like that.
And they went through and they changed everything, sort of his, hers, etc., etc. And they came to the London Paris bit, and they had, it was written there in their draft. They had changed it from a 4-man team to a 4-person team. Okay. And I said, I'm sorry, no, you can't change that one, because it was 4 men. It wasn't 4 persons, it was 4 men. And I got that one through. But so I've got Everyone's Guide to Distance Running, which has now been published. I'm very, very proud of it. Published over the years in South Africa for about 4 versions. It was the first book to be translated by a comrades runner, race number 4, Nick Robenheimer, into Zulu. And I don't think, but it was way before its time, because that was 1991 that it was published in Zulu. And then it's published in America and UK as well. Then my second book was the beginner's guide, Every Beginner's Guide to Walking, Jogging and Running. And so it's the wrong way round, but
yeah, well, that's like a Jeff Galloway, method of walking, jogging, and running. We have someone who had met you in India. He's saying hello to you. His name is Chandrasekhar.
Yes, Solapur. Solapur has a half marathon, and I measured that about I think it's probably 2 years ago now, because I've got about 10 races or 10 events that I've been associated with in India. And I mean, I'm still involved with the Adani Marathon, which has gone virtual this year. Please pay attention, go on and register for your virtual experience in the Adani Marathon. We've got a couple of really special things going on there. And then, of course, Navi Mumbai Half Marathon, which is in Mumbai, but we're trying to make sure that takes place February this year. There's a couple of build-up virtual races, which there are still things being discussed with Sid from Sports United on that. So they're coming on. They've got their virtual races right now, and that will build up to the half marathon, whether it's virtual or. And then, of course, Satara. That was the first race that I was involved in India. And that came from just down the road, meeting up with Dr. Sandeep Kati and the team. Great people there. Fantastic. I mean, what they have done for that community is just unbelievable. It's and I don't know if have you been there? Have you done that race?
No, but I did an interview with Dr. Kate, and so I know about what he has done. So.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, you must actually go there. But I went there first in 2014, and it's a community of 400,000. There was hardly a hotel there, and there's a chap there, AJ, who helps me with the measurement and so on. And in those days, there was 1,500 runners.
Yeah.
And over a period of time now, last year, I stand corrected, it opened and closed in 3 hours with 7,000. And when I was last there, the number of hotels and the way the community has expanded is just phenomenal. And these are people working in the community to make a difference. And it just shows you what can happen when you take a race. It shows you the commercial impact. And that is one of the reasons we need to get road running back on around the world, because the commercial impact that it has on communities can be mammoth. And one thing COVID has done is hit us all economically. And so we need it. But of course, running itself is an immune booster. It's being healthy. The people that are having the problems are those that have the comorbidities. And so running has an awful big role to play around the world at this time.
Yeah. You spoke about your books, but your favorite is Team Nooks actually. So I think you spoke, I've seen one of your videos where you're doing this exercise with his book for breathing, so he kept that on your tummy and, talking about breathing through the tummy. And he said, over the years, the book has gone bigger and bigger as his knowledge grew, right?
Absolutely. And so the weight increases. Tim, there are two really good key things about Tim. First of all, he does his research.
Yeah.
And he comes through and he, of course, like every sports scientist, they go, well, this is what is happening. If this is happening, then this is what we would expect to happen. And that's what he did with the whole carbohydrate thing back in the 80s. And so he had us all go on to carb loading and so on.
Yeah.
And we could talk about all of that. But what's really special about Tim Noakes is he's not scared to stand up and say, I got it wrong. And he said that on a number of different things. Carb loading was one, shoes are another, where initially he was pushing the idea of anti-torsion and so on.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is we've been running since the year dot, and technical shoes only came in about 1989.
Yes.
So the shoe story has been totally commercialized, just as the sugar carbohydrate. We now know that we should be on a lower fat, lower carb, higher fat diet.
In fact, the fat story is also commercialized, right? Take away fat. So I think the people are, now realizing that the fat is also okay.
Yeah, exactly, and it's an essential part of your diet, and it links in so well with the low heart rate training.
Yeah.
So, but let's not discount the vegetarian and vegan aspects of the diet as well, which can also have impact. But so he was able to stand up and say, "Listen, I got it wrong." And he'll happily explain that to everyone. Plus the fact that commercialism took over. And that's what happened with the shoes. Commercialism took over in the design of the shoes. And we have been sold down the river by many of the running shoe manufacturers. In fact, if you go back to when Nike brought out their Free, Free, and it was highly flexible.
Yeah.
There was actually an apology from the top of Nike, the head chap at Nike, saying, we got it wrong. And they did, they got it wrong. Now, of course, Nike have brought out an extremely rigid shoe because there's a plate in there, but it's actually not a spring, but it actually puts you into the correct running style. And many of our...
which is the best shoes in your opinion now? I mean,
there's
and
no there's no such thing as the best shoe as such. Let me just take something off. What you want in a shoe is some
yeah,
protection on the outside, protection against thorns, cigarette ends, glass, that sort of thing. You want a bit of cushioning because of the tiles, the road, the hard surfaces we're running on. And then you want total and utter flexibility. Why? Because the best shoes that you'll ever get are your feet.
okay,
You don't need, I mean, we were born, it's like saying, why doesn't a leopard have shoes? Because
okay,
they've got the correct tools to be a fast runner. We've got the correct tools there, but we need some sort of protection because we're no longer running on the open felt and grass and so on. That said, what are the best and fastest shoes now? Technology in the last few years has made a difference. And in fact, there are some phenomenal shoes coming out of China with plates in them. The Saucony one comes from the same manufacturing factory as Xtep in China, XTEP. And Xtep have a phenomenal shoe for the recreational runner with a plate in it. And when you put it on, you become the spring. It utilizes your body. The Nike one that started off with the gray one, I'm trying to think what that was called. It's before Vaporfly. The Nike one puts you in such a way that when you land, there's a very hard forefoot. And when you land, you're in the correct position, which is leaning forward, and you're engaging your core, which means that the force that you're putting in will push you forward. Remember, everyone or many people think that running is about putting your foot forward. That's totally and utterly false. Running distance is about putting your foot down and pushing backwards. It's about using your arms and elbows to drive backwards. The forward motion is simply the reaction from that. You're pushing against the ground to move the body forward. And that is a key thing that people need to understand. Now, if you've got a shoe where the heel is too big, and that seems to be about 11 millimeters higher than the forefoot, then many people are forced to land on the heel and then the toe. But that landing with the heel ahead of the center of gravity is actually stopping you all the time. And so it's actually a negative. Plus it's putting a shock wave up the leg, so your knee or your hip, whichever is the weakest point, will be damaged. And many people get shin splints because of this heel-toe action. That came because in the 70s, when the running boom started in America, a lot of people who had been spending years on a couch then took up running. And because it was such a sudden take up and because they were doing too much too soon, a new style was designed. And that style was called jogging. And jogging is a cross between walking and running, where they use the heel to cushion the blow. But it's not running. And so if you're doing anything over sort of, or under rather, faster than, say, a five-hour marathon, 8 minutes a K, that sort of thing. If you're going faster than that, 7-8 minutes a K, then you should be focusing on running. Now, at the same time, we lost PE, physical education, out of many schools, education program. And so kids are not taught how to run. Okay. Style and fashion have also had its impact on shoes. And so people are not, running the way they should be. And if you take the easiest way to do this is take your shoes off, go out onto the grass or a hard beach or anywhere that's safe, or even a carpeted room like a corridor in a hotel or something, and just run freely in your bare feet, just for a short distance, 100 meters, 200 meters, and see where you land. And you will tend to land either midfoot or on the ball of your foot. And that is how we were designed to run. And that's a shoe that you feel comfortable in that allows you to do that is the best shoe for you. So and there are lots of shoes. It's not about the manufacturer, any particular manufacturer. It's about the style of the shoe, your mechanics, and making it work. The exception being the plates.
Have you tried the Nike Zoom X Alpha Fly, the latest one?
No, I've had it on my feet, but I haven't run in it. And it's you can feel that there is something in there, and you can feel that it's lightweight, and it's going to give you the plate. I run in now an X-Step X60 600, which has a plate in it. I've got the original Nike plate, and I've got one called the Nike Zoom. Oh, I've forgotten what the name of that is, but yeah. So I've tried a few of the plates, these plates work when they're properly designed. The Nike ones, I would say, are more designed for the faster people. And also they have narrow fit. The X-Step one from China, which is also available for friends in Dubai. It's also available through Abu Dhabi, through Gulf Multisport in Abu Dhabi. Those are actually broader fitting, and I would say less aggressive, and therefore fitted more suitable to the recreational club runner sort of thing, and definitely make a difference. All of those ones designed with those sort of plates make a difference. And one of the reasons is the angle they put you at engages your core. It forces you to engage your core, because the key to good running style is in your core.
Okay.
So everyone should be doing that.
That's nice. So a couple of training questions for you, Norrie. The first one is that in today's fast-paced world, everybody wants to run faster, especially the average hobby runner. So they train too much and they get injured and they leave running. So what's your take on training or increasing pace without getting injured? And another sub question is that how many years of training will it take for a 45-year-old person to run a marathon, which is at sub 3 marathon?
Okay, so it's not this. Let's deal with the sub 3 marathon. To do a sub 3 marathon, you need a 38-minute 10K. To do a 38-minute 10K, you need an 18:30, let's say, 5K. So your training needs to be, how do I get to an 18:30 5K? And if you're doing 18:30 5K, that's what? 3 minutes, 15, about 3:45 a K or something like that. 3:40 a kilometer. So one of the things you have to be doing is doing kilometer repeats at 3:40. 338, 340, something round about there. That's where you want to be focusing. You've got to have endurance. So it's all very well having the speed. You also need the endurance. Therefore, you need to be going out and doing a long run. But there are basically 4 paces that you should have in your training. And depending on what distance you're training for, that's where the emphasis will change. So the four distances or 4 paces that you should be training are your best mile pace, your best 5K pace, your best 10K pace, and then your long distance endurance pace, which is your fat metabolizing pace. And to get into that, if you have a heart rate monitor, the best thing is to look at what they call the MAF pace. MAF was named after Phil Maffeton, Dr. Phil Maffeton. And he uses a formula which is 180 minus your age. And if you've been training for a year or so without problems, add 5. So let's say that you're a 40-year-old, you've used that. I'm still 35 as long as I don't look in a mirror. So a 40-year-old is 180 minus 40, that's 140, plus 5 if you've been training successfully without major injury or illness. So that's 145. I go out and I run and I don't let my heart rate go above 145. And what I'm doing is I'm then using a system of triglycerides in the blood being converted into carbohydrate, and then the carbohydrate converted into a substance called ATP. We can leave that out because at the present moment, and using the carbohydrate from that. So I use the simile of a hybrid car. A hybrid car has a battery and it has an engine. If I just drive very lightly on the accelerator, I'm using the battery, and I can keep that going. And if the road is flat, I can cruise along it there forever because I'm not using petrol. Now, the petrol side, I have maybe 40 liters. In our body, we have 400 grams roughly of carbohydrate. And so 400 grams of carbohydrate, and a gram of carbohydrate is 4 calories. So I have 1,600 calories of carbohydrate in my body, and our running is typically 800 calories per hour. So I have roughly 2 hours of energy in my body, fuel in my body. And that is why people talk about the wall being after 2 hours. So that's what's happening. We're used all our carbohydrate up, and we have to drop back onto this fat metabolizing, back onto the battery. But you see, if we've not trained the battery, then we're not using the battery until we're forced to use it, so to speak. So what we need to do is our long training and our recovery training needs to be at this low heart rate pace. And when you first start, you'll find that you have to run and walk a lot to keep the heart rate down at that level. But after 4, 5, 6 weeks, you'll suddenly find, or not suddenly find, gradually find that your running pace at that heart rate is getting faster. Why? Because you're using that and you're training that energy system. Now, so that's a major part of it when you're trying to develop the endurance. Now you come to the speed. Well, the speed, the size of the engine that you have comes from doing the quality work, your 10K pace, your 5K pace, and your mile pace. And you mix these in depending what distance you're actually training for. And generally speaking, up to certainly half marathon and even marathon, we tend to train endurance first and then into strength using hills and then into speed. That's the typical sort of Lydiard approach towards how to train. When it comes to ultras, we can turn that upside down, because the faster you are, as we said earlier on, the faster you are over 5Ks, the faster your average training pace. Therefore, in the 12 hours, the more distance you can go.
Okay.
But you've got to keep to training paces that match your ability.
Okay.
And that's where people get it wrong. They go out and they start running their long distances too fast. So it's wasted energy, it's wasted training, and it's damaging the muscles.
Okay.
And you've then got to recover from that. Whereas if you finish a 90-minute or a 2-hour, 2.5-hour long run at your correct training pace, actually it's not a problem. Okay. You know, it's your recovery will come back fast, and you can build up your distance and build up your endurance and build up your speed.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much for explaining that in such a detailed way, and I'm sure the people who are listening and and had posed the question, they get an answer. There's one question actually. Currently during the pandemic, a lot of people are doing indoor runs inside their apartments. So they are a bit worried about their speed and endurance. When they start doing outdoors. So what are the things they should be taking care of? When so that they won't lose their build-up speed and endurance.
Great question. I mean, absolutely fantastic. If you've got a treadmill, fantastic, no problem. No, you can do some running. Just be careful of doing indoor running as such. I'm not sure what the lockdown rules are in India at this, and I think it varies from state to state, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And of course, where you live. I saw a photo of where you were, or where you're living just now with that lake. There must be some paths that you can get out and go around, but also look at the stairs and corridors. So climb a set of stairs, run along the corridor, up the next stairs, run back, etc., etc. Use these for strength and legs, but don't just run in circles around things all the time, because that puts the potential of an imbalance. So for me, this is the opportunity to be working on your core. Do lots of planks, do lots of balancing left and right hand sides. So side planks, see how many you can do on the left, see how many you can do on the right, to a level of fatigue. Then swap those numbers over. So let's say I'm going to stand back a bit here. Let's say I can do 50 on this side and 30 on this side. So then what I try and do is do 30 on this side and 50 on this side by doing it in sets. Now what I'm doing is I'm taking my hips, because the hips are pulled out by what we do on a daily basis. So instead of having one hip up, which in this case is the right-hand side up, if I strengthen this side, I pull this so that the hips are level. And this is one of the biggest causes of injuries, is hips either up on one side or twisted back and forward, or twisted under. And those happen because of the way we sit in front of a computer, or we work, or things we do every day. So running round inside the flat on a very small circuit actually induces a short leg, long leg problem, which you don't want. So unless you can get some really reasonable running, try not to run on short circuits. Rather go out onto the corridors and the stairs, or out onto the road, or out onto a park. keep it small, keep it within the regulations, obviously, and rather add in things like planks, core work, squats, body weight, functional exercises. Yoga is a very big thing in India. I've got a very good friend, 𝐸𝐬 Gupta in Mumbai, and I mean, following her and doing some of the yoga moves, etc., will help get your functional. You keep your body as functionally fit, and that is actually more important than overdoing it with running indoors. It's a very tough time in COVID. I understand that, but hopefully we'll be out of that. And I don't know if you can even tell me when you're thinking that airlines will be open, but hopefully we will be able to travel. We think that Nigeria opens on the 5th internationally. We're hoping that we will open Africa this coming month, and internationally or intercontinentally by October, I'm hoping. So, yeah.
Satish is saying that we are looking forward Comrades happening in 2021, So he's saying he hope it happens. But I know I read your post about the sponsor backing out. I hope new sponsors come in for Comrades.
Well, Comrades needs to, I think, review where they are, where they're going. Obviously, 27,000 people on the road is not going to happen. This virus assessment, let's call it that. Let's not call it COVID, because there will be another virus afterward. And what we know from the World Athletics, International Medical Race Association, other sports, is from now on there is no such thing as zero risk. So all the seasonal flus, etc. So when we arrive at a race, we're going to have to be screened, or we're going to have that sort of thing. I would like to compare it with you to the terrorist situation after 9/11. If you remember, after 9/11, you went to an airport and it took forever to get through everything. And you had to show what was in your bag, and we virtually had to strip down totally. Now we go to the airport, and even Mumbai, they won't let me in unless I've got my ticket and so on. But once I'm in, you don't really notice so much the security anymore, because it's part of the process. And that's what's going to happen, I think, with running. Initially, we're going to have very major challenges. It's going to change, and then we will develop systems and mechanisms such that it becomes a lot smoother and we get back into running. But I don't see us ever getting back to the place where we're right up against each other anymore. And so the numbers are going to have to be rethought. There are ways of doing it. Whether or not Comrades are actually doing that yet, we're hearing nothing at present. So it's a bit disappointing. But I mean, Mumbai Marathon will be doing the same thing. Adani Marathon, we're doing the same thing. We're saying, what is it we're required to do? What changes? How do we make things work? Navi Mumbai, hopefully by February, we will have the ability to host a number of people on the Palm Drive, ideally, which is a lovely, fast, flat course, and get back out there and running.
I'll just pose one question from the audience, Norrie, before I pose one of your most favorite questions, for you. Before that, I'll just pose one more question. The question is from an audience. He said that what should we eat after a long run so that the body fat is used?
Okay, so it's what you do before the run that actually counts more than anything else. So if you're doing it early in the morning, and can I just pick up on something else, please? You've said 10 to 15 Ks. don't use distance. Rather, particularly for long runs, rather use time. Long runs, 75 minutes is your bottom end and 3 hours is your long end. You don't need to go longer than 3 hours, even if you're running 100 milers. The only reason you would go longer than 3 hours is for this, to convince yourself that you're okay. So work on time. And I'll give you an example of that in a couple of seconds. But what do you do beforehand? Do not eat carbohydrate. Have things like a cup of black coffee, even put some MCT oil or some coconut oil in it. That's the sort of thing, so that you're training your body to burn the fat. Do not start off fast, start off slower. Even start with a run 1 minute, walk 1 minute, run 2 minutes, walk 1 minute, run 3, walk 1, etc. to 4. And that will have given you a nice slow warm up to get your body into the fat metabolizing mode. When you come back, okay, then it's a different thing, because if you've done damage to your muscles, you want to repair that. You repair that with protein. Some great proteins out there, but you've got to get the protein into the body. So, and you're probably dehydrated, or you've certainly gone down over 1.5 hours, you'll have gone down on your carbohydrates, etc., because you're burning the fats. So you may want to take a very small amount, 25 mils, 25 grams, maybe even slightly less of carbohydrate. The carbohydrate, if it's high glycemic carbohydrate, will swing your blood sugar level from low blood sugar level to high blood sugar level. Your pancreas then says, whoa, hang on, too much. And it throws in insulin, and insulin pulls the protein, which you're going to take immediately afterwards, into the muscle and helps the recovery. So it's a sort of, make sure you're using the right sort of thing. Now, the reason I'm saying don't use your distance is because if you go out there with the distance in mind, you'll keep on going, and you'll start losing time, and you'll say, oh, I've got to speed up to get the distance. No, you don't. See what distance you can do in the time, and that will give you far better results.
Thank you very much, Norrie. So I'm putting myself in front of you because I want to ask your most favorite question. You are a certified course measurer, and one of the most senior most in the world, actually. The question is this: why should we actually do a course measurement? Why can't we believe in our Garmin watches, which we spend a lot of money to buy? And I know that is an answer, a lecture by itself, because you've done a 3-day course in India for course measurement. But if you can concisely answer it in a few minutes, it will be helpful.
Okay. So a Garmin uses satellites. No, let me start with how do we measure a course? We measure a course with a bicycle, and the bicycle has a meter on it, and we measure out a 300 meter distance on the road using a steel tape.
Yeah.
So that distance is accurate. We then cycle that to calibrate the digital counter on the bike. And it's important that we understand that. So in a circumference of a wheel, there are 27 clicks. That means that each click on the bike is about that. And we can read to portion of that. So the accuracy of what we're reading is that 2 inches, 50 millimeters, roughly, right?
Yeah.
A Garmin or a Suunto or a Polar or a Apple Watch, whichever, right, uses the satellite. The satellite puts us meters either side of where we are, okay? Now, when we're cycling a course, we take the shortest possible length. So if I'm turning a corner to the left, I measure 300 millimeters from the curb. But I'm running and I've got my watch on this side and I'm already a meter from the curb. So automatically it's longer. My arm is going this way and the watch has an algorithm in it to take the average of how people run. But I run like this and someone else runs like this.
Okay.
Right? So there's an accuracy there. The Garmin doesn't pick up on my watch. It picks up 6 meters or so either side of that. And if you take a download or an upload, depending how you look at it, of your watch after you've run, and you open up that on a map, Google Earth or something, you will find that you're running through buildings because the path is not on the correct path. Okay. So we've done the tests around the world, various measurers, various people. There was a guy called Bill Reynolds, who's passed on now from London. He and I did Beirut Marathon. Hugh Jones in London has done. In America, they've done. And what we found was that on average, and very consistently on average, a Garmin or GPS is 8 meters per kilometer too long. It is rarely, if ever, too short. The only time that it may be too short is if you're running on a very circular route, because then it joins straight lines. But generally, it's 8 meters. I've gone put it on top of the center of the handlebars, directly above the digital counter, and in a 4 kilometer, it was 25 meters too long. So it will always be out. So if you're trying to race a 5K during COVID, go out there and do 5.04, and that will probably give you an accurate 5K time. 10K, 10.08, and so on. And it will give you a far better accuracy.
Okay. We have a very special guest who is saying hello to you. Sandeep Kate, doctor, your friend from...
Oh, yeah. Yes. How's it, Sandeep? How are you? Please give my regards to the team in Satara. And yeah, they are fantastic. I mean, I promise you that if you haven't done Satara Hills, do Satara Hills. If you want a really fast marathon course in India, go to the Adani Marathon or the Adani Half Marathon. Yeah, there's some great courses. You've got some great courses around in India. And I honestly think that in the next year, we're going to see India take off. There are people there who can do so much better. You've got the right sort of scenarios for it. It's the weather that actually is the challenge in many cases.
Okay. In fact, we only wish that you come and do training courses in India and have coaching courses, because the courses what you had is on course measurement, but we want you to come and do some workshops in India on running. So I hope that people who are listening to this would invite you.
If anyone wants that to happen, when we put together 2 or 3 projects, coaching, measurement, etc., when I come across, when we're allowed to get back, that would be fantastic. And as I say, you've got some great yoga people in the country, and particularly, well, I know Shami Gupta, who's to me is quite a inspiration. And we can even look at corporate, how people sit, how people work. That is where the injuries come from. That is where the bad retirements come from, etc., etc. So only a pleasure. I love what I do. I'm passionate about what I do, and I'm incredibly, incredibly privileged and blessed to be able to do what I am at my age in life. So fantastic.
I hope the food doesn't bother in India. I hope any favorite food you like to eat in India.
Butter chicken korma, In fact, I had it here in Durban the other night. It's
Yeah.
fantastic.
We,
Initially, I'm not a spicy person. That's the only problem. So, in
we
fact, many of your vegan dishes go down very well.
we love the bunny chow in South Africa, so it's nice.
Yeah, we have Indian food in South Africa that you don't have in India.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we have been speaking for almost 1 hour 20 minutes now. Nori, I hope not. I'm not holding you for something you want to do. Just my last two questions. What are your future plans as a coach? What do you
Wow.
want to do?
To keep on learning, to keep on being fortunate enough to work with people. There's our German coach, Ralph Mushabini, who he and I have crossed paths in Zambia, in South Africa, and we actually did a small session like this, but we were in Qatar together, meet and talk and share and collaborate. And that is what the big change is for COVID, guys. The big change is let's all get together, talk, use my specialist side, your specialist side, whether that's in race organization, whether that's in coaching, whether that's in collaborate, work together, let's go forward, because that's the big thing. And sessions like this, they're the key for moving forward, sharing ideas. And that's my ambition, just to carry on enjoying doing what I'm doing, because it's a very blessed opportunity that I've got. I love seeing cultures. There's a chance I'll be going to a new country very close to you
Okay.
very soon for our event next year, which is incredibly exciting. We've
Okay.
got things coming up in the Middle East, uh, uh, somewhere where I think we've got the fastest course in the world. Certainly, it's the fastest course I have ever measured.
Okay.
So watch this space, and I hope everyone in India is safe, well, and will soon be out on the road again.
Okay. So, any final advice to amateur runners like us, on running, and somebody, or any final advice to anyone who wants to be like you?
Don't be like me. But certainly make sure that whatever it is you do, you enjoy. That's absolutely. When you're running, run for yourself. Run for yourself. I think it was my background as I said, as a youngster who was the slowest and fattest in his class. I think that gave me the desire, the need to prove something. And you will find that most people who are driven, who do something, have that background. It's not necessarily something you want to have, it's something that you end up having. So it's your heart and your head that drives you to achieve something.
Okay.
It's not about talent, because I'm not talented, but I analyzed, prepared, and then I had this burning need to do something. And that is what makes it. But whatever your goal is, make sure you have a goal and make sure you know why you want it, and you will achieve it. And when you achieve it, you will suddenly realize that you can achieve something else, and you start moving in that way.
That's nice.
Don't run for someone else's goal. Run for your goal.
Okay. So, Nori, before we sign up, Dr. Kate wants to know, is the course in Bangladesh, if you're allowed to say that? The
I'm not
fastest
allowed to say that.
Okay, then I'm not going to ask. So, Nori, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you and learning from you. You've got such vast amount of knowledge which you want to share, which is nice. I can't
Thank you
believe
very
that
much.
you got around 200 books lying just inside your apartment. Maybe you might need to, over a period of time, the way you answered that you want to keep on learning, you might have to buy another apartment in Durban to just to keep the books. So
Absolutely. I got another one. I got another one 2 days ago from the chairman of Savages, and it was actually the one on Dave Box, who I talked about earlier, who was
Yeah.
the World 100-mile record holder in 1968.
Yeah.
Dave gave me his training book, his training log,
Yeah.
and only now, that was 1982, he gave me the training log, and I got his autobiography 2 days ago. Now, I
Wonderful.
mean, you just keep on, there's just so much in everyone. Everyone has a journey, everyone has something. And the fastest course, by the way, or one of the fastest courses in the world, Sandeep, is to run from the runner's point on Satara Hill down into the city.
Okay.
Maybe I can share this with you. There was another Sandeep who did the pacing for Satara Hills up and down. And I did the first year of designing that pacing. And then Sandeep took over and he organized the pacers. Unfortunately, he passed away in a bicycle crash a couple of years ago. But they said, no, my pacing was wrong. I was too slow to the turnaround point. So I said to them, okay, I'm going to do this. And I went up and I was behind Sandeep all the way up, turned, came down, and Sandeep Kati will tell you they hadn't seen anyone take that much negative split on a course, because I was about 5-6 minutes faster on the way down than I was on the way up. And that is another tip to all runners. Try and be faster in the last third of the race. Boston qualification at home, Sandeep, you can't do it. It's got to be a qualified or a certified course. I'm trying to think who it is that's actually accepting. There is someone. London say they will accept a good for age time and a seeding time based on the virtual race. So that's going to be very interesting, because I'm not sure how they're going to check that I didn't get on my bike with my Garmin and just cycle at the correct pace.
Yeah,
Thanks,
I think
Satish. Very nice comment. Thank you. And thanks again for the India t-shirt, which I wear with pride, the India Comrades t-shirt. Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Coach Norrie. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I hope that we keep on corresponding, and I hope that we can see more of your insights over a period of time. And it's been a pleasure, and thank you very much for coming in. Thank you.
Rajesh, thank you for having me, and I hope to be in India before the end of the year. Let's hope.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
So it's been a pleasure talking to all of you and tuning in. It's my longest interview ever. So 1 hour, 28 minutes. And thank you all for your questions. And it's been a pleasure to all of you. And Coach Norrie has been so nice in sharing his experience. It seems that we could have talked a little more. But I think, we can do it in some other time. And I'm sure Coach Norrie will be willing to do it. Thank you all. Sandeep, Dr. Sandeep Kate, thank you for tuning in and always motivating me. Satish Gujaran sir, you've been a blessing to me. I think you have tuned for all the interviews which I've done, and I thank you for that. Chandrasekhar, Rohit, thank you for your questions, and I hope you got the answers from Coach Norrie. That's all from my side. The same video would be loaded onto my YouTube channel. So if people have missed this interview, you can always go into the YouTube channel to look at the interview. Thank you very much for having me. Bye.